The first time he misspelled my name, I thought it was a mistake. The fifth time, I was convinced it was either a cosmic joke or his own brand of barista-level warfare. Who knew a cardboard cup could hold so much passive aggression? It was a chilly Thursday morning in New York City, the kind of morning where even the air felt judgmental. I pushed open the door to Maple Street Cafe, the little corner shop that smelled like cinnamon, burnt espresso, and 100 broken hearts. And there he was again, the barista with the soft brown hair that curled just enough to look careless, and those nervous eyes that avoided mine whenever I called him out. "Name?" he asked, not even glancing up. "Ethan?" I said, clear and slow, as if he were auditioning for a spelling bee. He scribbled something down, his jaw tightening like my name had personally offended him. 5 minutes later, I was sipping on a latte with "Even" scrawled across the cup. Even. Not Ethan. Not Evan. Not anything remotely close. Just even. I laughed, but it wasn't the kind of laugh that said I was okay. It was the laugh of a man slowly losing a war against his caffeine dealer. That day, I did something reckless. I grabbed a napkin, yanked a pen from the tip jar, and scrawled my number down. Then, with the sharpest smirk I could muster, I shoved it across the counter. "Since you can't get my name right," I said, "maybe you can get this right instead." For the first time in weeks, his eyes finally met mine. Why, stunned. And maybe, just maybe, a little hopeful. I didn't expect him to text. But he did. It started that same night, just 3 words lighting up my phone. "So, even?" I almost threw my phone across the room. But something about the way he played it, mocking but also vulnerable, made me smile. Against my better judgment, I texted back. That's how it began. The late-night conversations. The teasing. The way he confessed, almost in whispers through the phone, that he wasn't trying to be cruel. That he just got nervous around me. That he'd been afraid of spelling my name wrong the first time, and somehow it became a habit he couldn't shake. And suddenly, the boy behind the counter wasn't just a barista with shaky handwriting. He was Liam, 22, a music student, someone who lived in a cramped apartment with his guitar and a plant he kept killing and reviving like some twisted science project. But let me back up. The truth is, I wasn't looking for this. I wasn't looking for him. My life at the time was all sharp edges and half-broken pieces. I worked at a law firm that treated me more like a machine than a human. I had friends, sure, but they were always too busy chasing careers or running from their own loneliness. And my last relationship? Let's just say if heartbreak were a sport, I'd have a gold medal. So when Liam came into my life with his crooked smile and ridiculous coffee cups, I didn't think he'd matter. I thought he'd be a joke, I told my friends. The guy who can't spell my name. But then his texts kept me awake at night. His voice notes made me laugh when I swore nothing could. And slowly, dangerously, he started to matter. The first time we touched, it wasn't even romantic. It was an accident. I'd stopped by the cafe late one evening, long after the rush, when the place was half empty and quiet enough that you could hear the hum of the espresso machine. Liam was wiping down the counter, his sleeves rolled up, forearms dusted with flour from some abandoned pastry project. I reached for my drink at the same moment he slid it toward me, and our hands brushed. Just a second, skin against skin, but it jolted through me like lightning. I looked up. He looked up. And for once, neither of us looked away. "Sorry," he whispered. But it didn't feel like something to apologize for. It felt like the beginning of something I wasn't sure I was ready for, but couldn't stop wanting. Still, it wasn't all sweetness and soft glances. There were nights when Liam would pull away, retreat into silence like he was afraid of letting me in too far. He'd joke about his misspellings, about his clumsiness, but underneath it I could see the weight he carried. The way he never talked about his family. The way he avoided certain questions, like there were whole chapters of his life written in ink he couldn't wash off. And me? I wasn't much better. I wanted to believe I was ready to love again. But some nights I'd find myself staring at his texts with fear clawing at my chest. What if I ruined this? What if he ruined me? What if we were just two broken people trying to tape our pieces together, only to cut each other deeper? But then came the night that changed everything. It was raining, One of those relentless New York storms where the sky feels like it's falling apart. I was drenched by the time I made it to the cafe, and there was Liam, locking up for the night. He looked up, startled, when he saw me standing there, hair plastered to my forehead, shivering like a fool. "What are you doing here?" he asked, fumbling with the keys. "I don't know," I admitted, voice cracking. "I just needed to see you." And before I could talk myself out of it, I kissed him. Right there, under the flickering street lamp, with rain pouring down like the world was ending. It wasn't perfect. It was messy and desperate and wet. But it was real. God, it was real. And when he kissed me back soft, trembling, like he'd been waiting for this all along, I knew I was in trouble. Because this wasn't just a story about coffee cups anymore. This was about us. The kiss should have solved everything, but it didn't. If anything, it cracked open the truths we'd both been running from. For a few weeks, it was like living in a dream. We texted constantly, shared inside jokes, and spent long nights on the phone until one of us drifted off mid-sentence. I'd visit him at the cafe after work, sometimes staying until closing, just to watch him move behind the counter like the space belonged to him. But dreams don't last forever. Reality always comes knocking, and when it did, it hit us hard. The first fight was stupid. Most first fights are. I'd been buried under a brutal week at the firm, clients breathing down my neck, partners reminding me I was replaceable. When I finally made it to the cafe, all I wanted was Liam, his easy smile, his warmth, his way of making me feel like the world wasn't collapsing. Instead, I walked in and saw him laughing with someone else. Some guy in a leather jacket, leaning across the counter like he owned the place. And Liam was laughing, carefree, open, the kind of laugh he rarely gave me. Jealousy is a disease. It burned through me before I could stop it. "So you spell his name right?" I snapped when the guy finally left, the words tasting bitter the second they left my mouth. Liam blinked, stunned. "Ethan, what? You know what?" I cut him off. "You can spell every name in this damn city but mine? Or is it just easier to pretend with me?" The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Liam's face closed off, his shoulders stiffening like a door slamming shut. "I'm not doing this with you," he said quietly. "Not tonight." And just like that, he walked into the back, leaving me standing there with anger I didn't know how to carry. We didn't talk for days after that. I threw myself into work, into late nights and empty takeout boxes, but every quiet moment was haunted by the sound of his silence. When he finally texted, it wasn't what I expected. "Meet me, please. Roof of the cafe. Midnight." I almost didn't go. Pride told me to stay home, to let him come crawling back first. But when midnight came, I found myself climbing the fire escape, rain-slick metal cold under my hands, until I reached the rooftop. Liam was there, sitting cross-legged with a blanket wrapped around him, guitar resting across his lap. He looked up when I approached, his eyes tired but determined. "I don't laugh easily," he said without preamble. "That guy at the counter? He was my cousin. He was telling me a story about when we were kids. That's why I laughed." I felt my stomach drop. "And as for your name," Liam continued, voice tightening, "I got it wrong once, just once. But you smiled when you saw it. You thought it was funny, and I liked seeing you smile, so I kept doing it. It was stupid, I know, but it was my way of keeping you looking at me, like I mattered." My chest ached. All that anger, all that jealousy. And for what? "Liam," I started, but he shook his head. "You think I don't know you're scared?" he asked softly. "You think I don't see it in your eyes every time you get close to me? Like you're just waiting for me to hurt you? But Ethan, you're not the only one who's scared. I've never done this before. I've never felt like this before. And it terrifies me." His voice cracked on that last word, and I realized then how fragile he was under the smiles and coffee cups. I sat beside him, pulling the blanket over my shoulders too. For a long moment we just sat there, the city stretching out below us, lights blinking like broken stars. Finally, I whispered, "You don't have to be scared alone." He leaned into me then, just enough that our shoulders touched, and in that simple gesture, something inside me eased. Things weren't magically fixed after that night, but they were better. We learned to talk more, to fight less, to listen even when it hurt. I started opening up about my past, the heartbreaks, the trust I'd lost, the way I kept people at arm's length because I didn't know how to survive losing them again. And Liam, slowly, let me into his world too. He told me about his parents who never quite understood him, about the loneliness of chasing music in a city that chewed up dreamers and spat them out, about the nights he'd lie awake wondering if he was enough for anyone. We weren't perfect, but we were real. The moment I knew I loved him wasn't during some grand gesture or dramatic scene. It was a Tuesday morning, quiet and ordinary, when I stopped by the cafe before work. He handed me my coffee with a grin, and there it was on the cup. Ethan. Spelled perfectly. I looked up at him, confused. I figured it was time to get it right, he said softly. Something in my chest broke open then, in the best possible way. I'd never loved anyone so much in such a simple moment. Months later, we stood together in his tiny apartment, boxes stacked around us. He was moving in with definitely giving up his shoebox space for something we could call ours. As we carried the last of his things in, he placed a battered cardboard box on the counter and opened it. Inside were dozens of old coffee cups, each with my name scribbled wrong in a dozen different ways. Ethan. Eden. I stared, wide-eyed. You kept these? He shrugged, cheeks flushing. Every single one. They were my excuse to talk to you, to keep you coming back. I laughed, tears stinging my eyes. You're unbelievable. And you're mine, he said, pulling me into a kiss. Looking back now, I realize it was never really about the coffee cups. It was about the moments between them, the laughter, the fights, the silences, the confessions. The way we stumbled through fear and found each other anyway. Love, I've learned, isn't about perfection. It's about showing up. It's about spelling the name wrong 100 times and still trying again. It's about the courage to hand someone your number, even if it's out of spite, and discovering something far greater on the other side. And every morning now, when I wake up to the smell of coffee and Liam humming in the kitchen, I know one thing for sure. This time, he always spells my name right. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.